Have you been thinking about relocating to a new state, and New Hampshire's on your list of states that you might want to move to? Well, today I'm going to be going over some important things to know about moving to New Hampshire to see if it's kind of the right fit for you and what you're looking for lifestyle-wise, home prices-wise, economy-wise, and all that good stuff. So stay tuned and we'll dive into it right now. My name's Moynihan. I'm a local real estate agent and investor based out of Keene, New Hampshire. And if you're looking to move to the area, have questions, looking to sell, just feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help, and I'd be more than happy to speak with you about whatever you're dealing with in real estate and see how I can help. So the first topic that we're going to touch on is the actual lifestyle in New Hampshire and kind of what to expect lifestyle-wise, because New Hampshire is one of the smaller states, ranked number 41 overall, with a population of only 1.4 million people. We're not a very populated state. We're not a very densely populated state. Our biggest city is Manchester with about 100,000 people in it. And other than that, you got a couple kind of hot spots around the area, some on the seacoast, the center of the state, a little north, and then over towards the west. But other than that, you're dealing with a lot of small towns that have people scattered throughout them. And it's kind of just a country small town feel in New Hampshire overall. Being a small town state means that there's kind of a sense of community in New Hampshire. I feel like a lot of people are just pretty self-reserved. They like to talk and they have their small group, their small network that they like to hang around. But a lot of people, there's just like little communities. And of course, all the smaller towns seem to have a pretty good sense of community, which is really nice to see. They throw kind of town events every year, the yearly events and all the good fundraisers. If something happens to someone in a town, a lot of times people in the town will kind of do a fundraiser to help them out. It's a really good feel on that. And we're, of course, the live free or die state. And a lot of people just like not being told what to do. We're pretty simple people up here. I don't think we're super judgmental or hateful of anyone. We just want our own space and not really to have to deal with a bunch of drama and people coming at you. So it's pretty like self-reserved space, and just kind of people like keeping their distance and being private. Of course, with the lifestyle, one of the biggest things, since there's not a ton of actual like urban areas with big cities, a big thing to do is recreationally doing things outdoors. So of course there's tons of hiking trails around here. There's 48 4,000 foot mountains that people love to go hike. My girlfriend did it. There's a great one right actually about 25 minutes from us, Mount Monadnock. It's I think the most hiked mountain in all of New Hampshire, if not the world. Like most hiked because so many people come to hike it. It's not necessarily a big hike or anything like that. It's just the most hiked because a lot of people from like Mass or New York will come up here to hike it. Of course, with that, you'll have some leaf peepers that come up in the seasons towards the fall that can slow down traffic and get a little bit annoying. But throughout the summer, of course, you got fishing, boating, you got swimming, all the fun stuff that's good to do in the summer. And then of course it switches over to the winter if you're ice fishing or if you're skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, still hiking. People hike throughout the year. There's also disc golf up here that there's actually a decent amount of courses. So there's a lot of stuff to do outside. And one thing I always like to keep it real on my channel is, again, I've been mentioning the small town feel. Please understand that if you're moving from like a big city, chances are, I don't know if you're going to like it because there's really no big city feel. Like even the biggest city we have is not really even comparable to anything like Boston, let alone New York and bigger metros like that. And with that being said, one thing, again, if you're coming from a big city, is if you move to New Hampshire, I would say 99% of the time you're going to need a car to yourself. Even like it doesn't even really work to have one per household unless you live and work in the same spot. Most of the time, everyone needs a car to get to places because things are a pretty far distance away. Next, we're going to jump into the cost of living and housing in New Hampshire. And surprisingly, New Hampshire is actually 10th most expensive state to live in across the United States, ranking in at 115 on the living index, where the national average is 100. So it is on the higher side of that. And I think a big reason for that is just because we have more and more people and businesses coming to the state, and home prices have been going up and up and up over the last few years. A big reason for that is because we basically saw a massive migration of new folks coming from other states, a lot of them being Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Virginia. Those places have been coming up, especially during the pandemic. A lot of them wanted to get out of the cities, and since they could work remotely from home, a lot of people came up here where home prices were cheap, therefore making them more expensive. So home prices right now the average across the average across New Hampshire is right about $500,000, where I want to say in 2019 or 2020, right before the pandemic, it was about 350,000. So in the last few years, it has seen a pretty dramatic increase. And that, of course, was along with rents, meaning that it's been becoming more and more expensive to be able to own a home in New Hampshire. Rent prices have also been going up, not as dramatically though, and they have been steadying off a little bit. Where I live in Keene, New Hampshire, which is again on the western side of the state, you can find a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment for around $1,600 to $1,800 a month. You move closer to Manchester, you're probably looking at $1,800 to $2,100, and then if you're in the seacoast, you're probably around $2,000 to $2,200, and then up north, it's about the same until you get really up north where it gets cheaper because not as many folks live down there, but I don't really cover that area, so I don't know it a ton. And one of the biggest issues of moving to New Hampshire for out-of-staters is, one, they kind of have a deception of what the actual property is going to be and the price that reflects it. New Hampshire has a lot of old homes, If you see a home 1950s or newer, that's practically the newer generations of homes up here. A lot of homes you'll find, especially in the smaller towns, but like the cities in the downtowns, a lot of them were built up in the early 1900s. So you see a lot of builds from like the 1870s to the 1920s, and that's a majority of them. So those are still selling for around that $500,000 mark. And a lot of people just don't have that expectation. They want to come up here, find a house with land that's brand new for $400,000. And that's just hard to find, or just doesn't exist. Now, another one is we've been having some issues with supply. Hopefully that is starting to be solved a little bit more because home prices are coming down a little bit. They're at $500,000, but they got all the way up to, I think, $540,000 for the average, I think back in August, if I remember correctly, around that time. So they have been dropping a little bit, but it's still hard to find that house that's in the $300,000 to $400,000 range for a single family. They're there. They are out there, but they're the most popular ones, and those are still seeing bidding wars, where other ones not so much. But it's just kind of understanding the affordable homes, and it's kind of hard because you can find affordable homes in cities, but you're not going to get the land. You move outside the cities, you might find an affordable home, but depending on how much land it is, it can make it a pretty expensive home. So it's just trying to figure out where you want to live. And another nice thing about New Hampshire, again, kind of small towns, is you can live right outside a city, but kind of be in the country and have those prices be a little bit lower. So make sure you find a good agent when you're looking up here that knows the areas you're looking at and kind of can point you in the right direction depending on what you're looking for and where the best location you're going to be able to find that is. Next, we're going to talk about the jobs and economy. And some of the biggest industries in New Hampshire are technology, healthcare, manufacturing, tourism, surprisingly, and education, surprisingly. And this one kind of surprised me when I was doing the research. New Hampshire's actually ranked number 1 in a recent study, I think it was in the end of October of 2024, that has New Hampshire ranked as a number 1 place in job opportunity. And it has one of the lowest unemployment rates across the whole country, coming in at 2.5% for the state of unemployment rate, which is very good to see. And then we're also seeing a good number of increases of available jobs, coming in at 1.7% per year, which is the 7th highest in the nation. Good to see. And New Hampshire, they're also the 7th best in job security. So we are a really good place for employment. Now, of course, depending on what you work on, you'll have to find the right area, because that's, again, the thing. Depending on where you're working might determine where you're going to live, because, again, there's only some of these are only in certain parts of the state where that job really is in demand. And New Hampshire also has the lowest percentage of the workforce living in poverty, which actually does mean that the workers are generally receiving reasonable pay, but it's kind of surprising to see that stat compared to the stat of us being the 10th most expensive state. You think there'd be more people, but luckily, again, with employment so low, most people are hardworking people that go to a job and actually produce for the state. And of course, we've always kind of had a strong business environment because of low taxes, and we don't have the general and we don't have state sales tax or state income tax, which is always nice to see. Next, we're going to move into the climate and weather. And one of the biggest things I love about New Hampshire is that we get to see all 4 seasons and truly see all 4 seasons, because we'll start with the spring. You really get a muddy season. You get all the flowers and trees blooming, and then comes summer and you get heat up here. People think it doesn't get that hot. And it doesn't necessarily get like over 100 a ton. It does get to 100, but a lot of times it's kind of in the I would say high 70s, mid 80s, but we get a lot of humidity out here. So just because it's 80, 85, but the humidity is 78, 90%, it gets pretty warm. And then you move back into fall, you get to see the real seasonal change of all the leaves turning orange. You're going to see the leaf peepers out, and then everything falls off the trees. It turns into a really cold winter. The days are shorter and nights last longer and are very dark. And yeah, you really get the whole seasonal effect. So that I do love. Speaking of winter, if you're coming from somewhere south, never really lived up in the winter, there are some things you should be doing. You should do yard work in this fall time, cleaning up the leaves, making sure everything's good, cleaning out your gutters so you don't cause ice dams up in your gutters where the ice just sits up there and then ends up destroying the gutter or just completely falling off your house. You want to get taken care of that. You want to make sure your heating systems are serviced and ready for the winter time. Make sure you have oil. And then again, if you're new to cars, if you have a front wheel drive car, you probably want to get some snow tires on there for the snow. And another thing, now that I'm mentioning snow, is New Hampshire loves to salt their roads. So if you're new to salt, you should probably get some car washes throughout the winter, or your car's gonna rot to shit. And that's never fun. You'll see a lot of rusty cars around here. And then the impact of winter on outdoor activities is kind of crazy, because despite being someone or somewhere that has a lot of winter, a lot of people just kind of hibernate for the winter and don't really go outside. They avoid the cold and just go from the house to the car to work to the house. That's about it. It's funny because I always joke, I take my dog for a walk 3-4 times a day, and throughout the summer you always see other dogs walking. Once the winter hits, all those dogs just disappear. The seasonal walkers come into play and they just let them out in the yard real quick. I always kind of find it sad, because if you have a dog, you should be walking your dog and treating your dog right. But that's just my move on it. And of course, with the climate and weather, like I said, summers are hot and humid. So there's a ton of lakes around here that you can go swim in, go to the rivers, go rafting down some of the rivers. It's a great time in New Hampshire. And it's really just like definitely something to get used to, because it's crazy how like quickly your body will get acclimated to the heat, and then how quickly it gets acclimated to the cold. And some days it'll be like in the shift of fall to winter time. Some days, the 3 days, the high will be like 25, and then you get another 3-day spurt where it's like 70s, and it's very confusing for a little bit of time. You're wearing a lot of layers and trying to figure out what makes your body happy. But that's kind of the climate and weather. So this was a little bit scattered. I did receive a phone call in the middle of this, so it got me a little scatterbrained. I hope this video did add some value to you and just went over a little bit more of New Hampshire, what to expect. The lifestyle is really laid back. It's fun. I say it's country, a little bit redneck. People just like there's people with community, and then there's the other ones that just like being left alone and having fun in the woods and having a bonfire, riding 4-wheelers and dirt bikes. The cost of living, of course, has been going up and up and up, which is a bit of a pain to see, because it used to be a kind of a cheaper state to live in. I'm hoping some real estate prices come down, but we'll kind of see. Luckily, the job and the economy of New Hampshire is doing pretty well, and we're seeing growth in a lot of different industries, so I like to see that. And then, of course, if you're moving from south, the weather is going to be something to get used to, but it's not terrible. There can be some really bad snowstorms, but luckily we don't get any other really major events of weather. We don't really get tornadoes or hurricanes or earthquakes even. We just mainly get snow. So that's a good point. And if you're looking to move up here, just feel free again to reach out, ask me any questions. I'd be more than happy to help. And if you like that video, hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next week.